Good morning and welcome to the Pleasure for Health podcast. My name is Elsa Kepi and I'm your host here, talking about all things relationship and intimacy related. And today I wanted to dive right into a really fun way of creating more intimacy and maybe more playfulness in your actual relationship or relationships. And this is something that I have personally tried in my personal relationships and also with clients, and it's been really fun. And so we're going to get to what that is. We're going to look at how to do that. First, if you want to find out more about me or how to work with me, you can check out my website at pleasureforhealth.com. You can also look me up on Facebook or Instagram. And also have a YouTube channel. So if you want to see who's talking to you, you can look me up on there as well. So let's dive right into our topic for today, which is how to spice up your sex life, how to get yourself in the fun, playful mood that you want to be in when when things are a little bit dull in your relationship. We've all gotten there. We've all kind of hit that plateau where we're like, it's nothing's very exciting anymore. It's not like that first month or 3 months when you're dying to see each other. Everything's exciting. The minute they touch you, you're on fire. All of these things kind of die down after a while, and this is normal. It doesn't mean your relationship is not good. What it means though is that we kind of have to work at the spiciness of our love life to make it still interesting. So how can we do that? So one way that I have found personally to be really fun is to think about your fantasies, to fantasize more. And we often, it's interesting. I think they did some research during COVID about people in relationships finding that when they weren't getting their needs met in their relationship, their physical needs, their sexual needs, their relational needs, the people tend to go inwards, like to go into their own head, to fantasize more in their, by yourself, rather than reaching out to a partner and, sharing this stress or this difficulty that you're having. We tend to just kind of go inwards and into our own head. And there's nothing wrong per se with going into your own head and having your own fantasies. But if you want this to actually strengthen your bond, strengthen your relationship with your partner, then you need to kind of get to a place where you're sharing some of those things in your head. So this is the place we're at now. Maybe you've found that you've been fantasizing more in the last year or two, and it's time the reality caught up. And I agree with you. I think we should look at some of that. I know, and just to caveat to that there are some fantasies that absolutely are best left in your head, and we can all hopefully discern some of the ones that should just never be spoken, and that's just for you. But there are some fantasies, and even kind of a little bit of a fantasy that you might share with the partner, and maybe you hash out a joint fantasy together, and then you figure out if you want to enact it or maybe you just want to talk about it. A lot of people fantasize just about talking dirty to each other, using different words, dressing up in different clothes, undressing, all the things, different place. The environment's different. Maybe you have different props. Maybe you want to experience different positions. So the fantasy can be, it doesn't have to be the whole everything is different and oh my gosh, I could never say all of that. It could just be, I fantasize about spending an extra 10 minutes in foreplay before we actually have sex. Or it might be, I wish we could have a date night where we played footsie under the table, because I've always wanted to do that in public but not being seen, type of thing. Maybe there's like a really subtle way that you could actually have that experience without it injuring you guys or your relationship or putting anybody in the public at risk of, kind of having to witness your things that are private. So we don't actually need to put ourselves out there so much, but just to give a little bit of a sense of what we're thinking about. And why is that important? Well, how exciting is it to hear your partner, your lover, tell you something hot and sexy? Like, how, it's pretty fun. Like, if they're like, "Oh, I really love it when you wear that red underwear and you lie in that certain way," it just gets me going. That kind of comment makes us feel good, and it makes us think about getting hot and heavy with our partner, and it puts us in the mood. And part of the living in that sort of erotic state is to actually keep yourself in the or put yourself in that mood more often. I can say it as a woman, and I mean that's really all the only experience I can speak of per se, but is we often can shut out our erotic feelings if we have other stuff to do. If you have 5 kids and a job and the dog has to get walked and the house needs to get cleaned, like you can kind of put your erotic fantasies and your needs, your sexual needs away, and you just get on with life. But that isn't going to help if you suddenly have a date night and now you're supposed to switch on this hot and sexy tap. Like, doesn't work really well. So we have to kind of feed our that aspect of ourself. And so fantasies are a way we can keep our own flame alive in ourself. And then when we want to fan up that flame, we can share a little bit of it with our partner. So I like doing this in a couple of different ways. One way that works pretty good if you find you're shy to actually talk out loud about your fantasy, is to try writing a little short erotica piece. So, erotica is a style, a genre of fiction writing, which focuses on erotic kind of content. So, if you write your fantasy, even if it's a couple of lines, like, I wish that, you'd take your shirt off, like, in the kitchen when you were cooking so that I could watch you without your shirt on cooking or whatever. Like, it could just be as simple as that. But see if you can write it. I looked over at his back and I realized he was getting hot in the kitchen, and he pulled off his shirt, and I just got to check out his back and look at all his muscles, and it looked amazing. And that's obviously my one of my kind of fantasies, but you could do it about anything, right? um so take something that makes you feel excited and write about it, and then see if you can share that with your partner, or send it to them after you've started it off. The woman sat quietly on the step, her hair blowing in the breeze and looking wistfully into the distance, her blouse dropping seductively off one shoulder. Like, you might have that kind of image to start off with, and then be able to kind of send that to your partner and say, where would you go with this? What's your fantasy? Add a couple of sentences to it, and then send it back and forth. This could be a fun way to kind of do that. I've had a few people that I've done that with. So I write a sentence or two and then we send it, and then maybe they write a whole paragraph, because sometimes you get into your scene and you're like, no, I have to finish the scene before I send it off to them. But it was really fun, and it can be ridiculous. Like, he pulled out his superhero cape and came rushing over, like, or it could just be really simple, like, he drove up in his truck and stepped down, and I had never seen anyone who made my heart flutter like that. It can be more like a Harlequin romance or more like a full-on porn show, whichever way you go. And that's a fun way to kind of see where your partner's at. And it can be, you can imagine if you start sharing these things back and forth with each other, that you would soon, when you saw each other, you'd have all that stuff that was percolating, and you would feel more like erotic. You would feel more hot. You would feel sexier, because you've kind of gotten those topics between you. It's like having this like secret. And even if you have kids and a job and all the rest of it, like writing a couple of sentences, sending it off to your spouse or your partner during the day for them to think about and answer you back, like, that can be a really great flirting pre-date day. And by the time you get going on your date, you're going to be all ready and wound up to be, intimate and into each other. And you don't have to spend your entire date just getting warmed up. And then by the time you get home, the baby's sick, and then, and it all goes downhill. We've all had those nights. So spice it up beforehand. Get these little flows going. Share some fantasy, like, oh, like I was thinking about that the other day. Like, can't wait till the weather's a little warmer and you can be, maybe it's naked gardening day. Maybe that's not your fantasy, but it might be, right? I would love to see some of those flowers like spread on the bed, and then have you, throw me on the bed and ravish me. Maybe there's some sort of fantasy there. And maybe that's not a realistic fantasy. Maybe you're too big and your partner can't lift you and all the rest. And, you can have a laugh about all of the reality of that. But you could still throw some rose petals on the floor and jump on the bed, and he can crawl up there after you, and it would still be pretty fun. And I think we just have to not take it so seriously and really just have, like, it's adult play. It's meant to be playful. We're meant to have fun. We're meant to be kind of like make those innuendos and make the little tell each other what we're thinking. And obviously, if your fantasy is that, you're interested in your neighbor's wife, well, your wife might not be that happy about that, learning about that fantasy. However, even then, even if you say, well, I have difficult fantasies and I don't know if I want to share those with my partner, I wouldn't necessarily rule out sharing. I would just maybe consider sharing in a different way. You might not say specifically who. You might say, well, sometimes I fantasize about you being different people or having different partners, and I'm very happy with you in a relationship, and I don't necessarily want to go there in reality. But I've heard of couples that your partner may be willing to like dress up in different costume type of thing, and they actually pretend not to know each other, and they say, I'll meet you at such and such a bar, but then when they get there they pretend not to know each other so they can chat each other up as strangers and pretend to have an affair that, but it's actually with each other. So, that can be a fun role-playing thing if you're into that. And it can kind of give enough spiciness without having to go to, well, now you cheated on me and then you've ruined your entire relationship potentially because you didn't want to negotiate polyamory. You just wanted to have a fling with someone else. And so being able to talk about that stuff and say, it really is a fantasy of mine to sleep with lots of people. How can we work with that? Because I really love you and I don't want to hurt you, but I'd love to play around with this idea. How could you do that? It doesn't have to mean you sleep with anyone else. It could just mean that you do it in different places, that you dress up in different clothes, that you pretend to be different types of people, that you ask your partner to come to the door, with a different, as if they don't live there with you and they're somebody different, delivering pizza or whatever the fantasy is. So I would say that if you have what you might call, ooh, that's a fantasy my partner may not love, that you think about it. And if you don't know where to go to talk about these things and come up with some creative thing, then reach out and let's do a session where I can help you to come up with some ideas of how to improve your relationship, especially using this type of fantasizing, this type of writing erotica together, maybe role playing. All of these things would be absolutely something we could work on in a session so that you have some tools, because a lot of the time it's not that we're not with the right person. It's just we don't have the tools. We don't have, we're afraid to talk about stuff that we want, and we don't have the skill to communicate well. And so lots of great relationships go downhill or get really boring because the people just, the people in the relationship just don't know how to talk to each other, or even how to get clear on what it is they want, which is honestly not as easy as it sounds. And I will probably do another podcast about that, because it is such an important thing, is really, coming to grips with who you are and what you want. And your fantasies are some of your most personal and private parts of yourself. So it really is, getting really down and dirty with yourself, right? Like, who am I when I'm in my own head? And am I willing to share that with my partner? And if I'm not, then I want to consider why. And if I am, well, I'm going to consider how to do that. So hopefully, this is giving you some ideas to work with, and hopefully it gives you some creative ways to be playful with your fantasies. And again, if you have fantasies of multiple people at the same time, or all these kinds of ones that can be difficult and really not that great in reality, but how could you make that work for you and your partnership? Maybe you figure out kind of how to talk about different experiences you've had in the past as you're building up to this one. Maybe there's ways of looking at that. Maybe you watch porn together and you get to watch other people being sexual together, and that can work for both of you. But it is really about kind of owning who you are, what your fantasies are, kind of having a little discernment as to what you share with your partner and how, but maybe bringing some stuff out in the open. And it ideally, this can make your relationship skyrocket to the next level, because now you're going to be really sharing you and not just going through the motion, what you think your partner wants or what you think you're supposed to be doing. Now you're actually sharing what really makes you hot, what really turns you on. So that is what being intimate demands of us, is that we really get honest with ourselves. So that is what I wanted to share with you today, and I hope it's given you lots of ideas. If you want to look me up, as I said, pleasureforhealth.com, YouTube channel, website, Instagram, Facebook. I have lots of ways that you can connect with me. I would love to hear from you. Please comment and share on this. I will be posting it on my podcast as an episode. So make sure you follow us for any new updates. And I hope you all have a sexy and hot day.